Welcome, dear traveler of thought, to the Sleepy Scholar. Tonight, we embark on a quiet journey through the corridors of human wonder, through questions that have troubled brilliant minds across centuries, through paradoxes that shimmer at the edges of comprehension, through ideas that challenge everything we believe about reality, consciousness, and existence itself. As you settle into this moment, let the world outside fade gently away. Here, in this peaceful space, we'll explore the profound mysteries that philosophers have contemplated in candlelit studies, in ancient gardens, beneath star-filled skies. These aren't mere intellectual puzzles. They're windows into the very nature of what it means to be aware, to exist, to wonder. And before we drift into these deep waters of thought, if you find comfort in these explorations, consider joining our community of curious minds. Subscribe to the Sleepy Scholar and let these stories of wonder become part of your nightly ritual of reflection and rest. Now, close your eyes if you wish. Breathe slowly, and let us begin. Part 1. The Phantom of Consciousness, Boltzmann Brains and the Nature of Reality. Imagine, for a moment, the entire universe as a vast ocean of chaos, particles swirling through the void for eons beyond counting, colliding, separating, reforming in endless combinations. In this infinite dance of matter and energy, strange things become not just possible, but inevitable. Among these strange possibilities lies one of philosophy's most unsettling thought experiments, the Boltzmann brain. The concept takes its name from Ludwig Boltzmann, a 19th-century Austrian physicist who wrestled with the nature of entropy and order. Boltzmann spent his life trying to understand why we see order in the universe at all, why matter arranges itself into galaxies and stars and planets, into living things that think and feel, when the fundamental tendency of everything is toward chaos and disorder. In the late 1800s, in the quiet universities of Vienna and Munich, Boltzmann developed his revolutionary ideas about thermodynamics. He was a man of intense passions and deep melancholy, someone who felt the weight of existence perhaps too keenly. His work revealed something profound and troubling. In an infinite universe, given enough time, anything that can happen will happen. Even a brain. Even your brain. Even this exact moment of consciousness you're experiencing right now. The Boltzmann brain hypothesis suggests that in the random fluctuations of an eternal universe, it would be statistically more likely for a single brain, complete with all your memories, your sense of self, your conviction of a continuous past, to spontaneously assemble from chaos than for the entire observable universe to have evolved naturally over billions of years. Think about what this means. Every memory you cherish, your first day of school, the taste of your grandmother's cooking, the face of someone you loved, the book you read last summer, all of it could be an illusion, a false history embedded in a brain that winked into existence just 1 second ago, floating alone in the void. The theory doesn't just challenge our understanding of reality. It challenges the very ground beneath our feet, the foundation upon which we build our sense of who we are. Boltzmann himself would likely be disturbed by this implication of his work. He died in 1906, long before these ideas were fully developed, taking his own life during a period of deep depression. His epitaph, fittingly, bears his entropy equation, a mathematical poem about the relationship between order and chaos. But here's what makes the Boltzmann brain more than mere speculation. It serves as what scientists call a reductio ad absurdum, a proof by contradiction. If a cosmological theory predicts that most observers in the universe should be Boltzmann brains rather than evolved beings, then something is wrong with that theory. Our best understanding of physics suggests we live in a universe where order can emerge from chaos through natural processes, where stars forge heavy elements in their cores, where planets cool and develop atmospheres, where chemistry becomes biology, where simple life becomes complex, where consciousness emerges not from random accident but from the patient, grinding work of evolution over deep time. The Boltzmann brain paradox reminds us that our existence, improbable as it seems, is more likely explained by natural history than by cosmic lottery. We are not random fluctuations. We are the universe's long, patient experiment with order, with life, with awareness. And yet, the question lingers in the quiet hours. How can we ever truly know? This uncertainty, this irreducible doubt about the nature of reality, leads us naturally to another ancient puzzle, one that predates modern physics by millennia, yet touches on the same profound unease. Part 2. The Prison of Perception, Solipsism and the Problem of Other Minds. There is a philosophical position so radical, so lonely, that most thinkers reject it almost instinctively. Yet it remains, stubbornly, impossible to disprove. Solipsism, from the Latin solus ipse, alone, itself. The solipsist argues that the only thing you can know with absolute certainty is that your own mind exists. Everything else, the external world, other people, even your own body, might be an elaborate illusion, a dream from which you never wake, a simulation running in the theater of consciousness. Picture yourself in a darkened room. You reach out and touch a wall. You feel its texture, its coolness, its solidity. But what you're actually experiencing isn't the wall itself. It's your mind's interpretation of electrical signals from nerve endings in your fingertips. The wall, as you experience it, exists only in consciousness. Now extend this. The people you love, speaking words you hear and gestures you see. These too are experiences in your mind. How do you know there's anyone actually there, experiencing their own inner life? How do you know you're not alone, dreaming an elaborate dream of community and connection? This question haunted René Descartes in the 17th century. Sitting by his fire in Bavaria, engaged in what he called his meditations, Descartes decided to doubt everything that could possibly be doubted. He imagined a powerful demon dedicated to deceiving him, making him believe in a false world. Everything Descartes had taken for granted crumbled under this radical doubt. The evidence of his senses? Unreliable. He'd been fooled by dreams before. Mathematical truths? Perhaps the demon was corrupting even his reasoning. His own body? Maybe just another part of the illusion. But then Descartes found his foothold, his one certainty in the storm of doubt, cogito, ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Even if everything else was an illusion, the very act of doubting proved that something was doing the doubting. A thinking thing existed. He existed. From this tiny seed of certainty, Descartes tried to rebuild the world. He argued that a good God wouldn't deceive him about the basic nature of reality. But many philosophers found this leap unsatisfying. The gap between I exist and the external world exists remained. In our own time, the solipsist's nightmare has taken on new dimensions. We worry not about evil demons but about ancestor simulations, the possibility that we're conscious programs running in the computers of a far future civilization, our entire reality a historical reconstruction. The philosopher Nick Bostrom has argued that if it's possible to create such simulations, and if advanced civilizations want to run them, then statistically speaking, we're probably living in one. After all, there would be countless simulated realities but only one base reality. And yet, we live as if other minds are real. We love people. We trust them. We build societies based on the assumption that others experience joy and suffering just as we do. Perhaps this is wisdom rather than naivety. The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein suggested that certain doubts are meaningless, not because we can prove them wrong, but because they disconnect us from the very practices that make language and thought possible. Doubting that other people have minds is like doubting whether words have meaning while using words to express that doubt. There's something profoundly human in choosing connection over isolation, even when absolute certainty eludes us. We cannot prove other minds exist, but we can recognize that the richest, most meaningful aspects of existence, love, friendship, art, conversation, all depend on taking that leap of faith. In the end, perhaps the question isn't whether we can prove that others are conscious, but why we need such proof. What are we protecting ourselves from? What fear drives us to wall ourselves up in the fortress of solitary certainty? The universe, in its vastness, might be lonely enough. We need not make ourselves lonelier still. Part 3, The Paradox of Identity, the Ship of Theseus and the Problem of Change. In the harbor of ancient Athens, there stood a ship that had carried the hero Theseus on his legendary voyages. The Athenians maintained it for centuries as a monument, a tangible link to their mythic past. But ships decay. Wood rots. Planks warp and crack under the assault of salt and sun and sea. So, one by one, the planks were replaced. A rotted board was removed, and a fresh one fitted in its place. A torn sail was patched, then eventually replaced entirely. The mast was reinforced, then rebuilt. The hull was resealed, replated, and restored. After many years, not a single original plank remained. Every piece of the ship had been replaced at least once, many times over. The philosophers of Athens asked, "Is it still the same ship?" This puzzle, recorded by the historian Plutarch, has echoed through 25 centuries of philosophical thought because it touches something fundamental about identity, continuity, and change. If you answer yes, it's still the same ship, then you're claiming that identity persists through complete transformation. The ship's identity isn't in its parts but in something else. Its form, perhaps, or its function, or the continuous process of maintenance and repair. But now imagine that someone had collected all the original planks as they were removed, storing them carefully. And imagine that, after the restored ship was complete, this collector assembled all those original planks back into a ship, using the original configuration. Now, which is the real ship of Theseus? The one that's been continuously maintained, with all new parts, or the one reassembled from all the original materials? Thomas Hobbes, the 17th century English philosopher, added this twist to the puzzle. And in doing so, he revealed how deeply problematic our intuitions about identity become when we examine them closely. The Ship of Theseus isn't just about boats. It's about you. Consider your body. The atoms that compose it are not the same atoms that composed it 7 years ago. Your cells die and are replaced continuously. Your skin entirely renews itself every few weeks. Even your bones, seemingly permanent, are constantly being broken down and rebuilt by specialized cells. The neurons in your brain, the physical substrate of your thoughts, memories, personality, are also in constant flux. New connections form, old ones dissolve. Proteins are synthesized and degraded. Even the molecules that encode your memories are not permanent fixtures but dynamic patterns, constantly refreshed. So who are you? If your body and brain are in constant flux, what remains continuous? What makes you the same person who went to sleep last night? The same person who existed 5 years ago? The same person you'll be tomorrow? Some philosophers argue for psychological continuity. You're the same person as long as you have continuous memories, beliefs, intentions, and personality traits connecting you to your past self. This is like saying the Ship of Theseus remains the same ship as long as it continues serving its function, maintaining its overall design, sailing the same seas. But memory is fallible. You forget most of your life. The person you were at age 5 had thoughts and perspectives almost entirely lost to you now. And in cases of amnesia, does a person become someone new? If you lost all your memories in an accident, would you cease to exist, replaced by a stranger wearing your body? Other philosophers point to physical continuity. You're the same person because your body, despite its cellular turnover, maintains a continuous existence through time. There's an unbroken physical path from the infant you were to the person you are now. But what about the thought experiment where you could upload your mind to a computer or teleport by having your body scanned, destroyed, and reconstructed elsewhere? If the pattern is preserved, is identity preserved? The philosopher Derek Parfit spent decades exploring these questions. He concluded that personal identity might be less important than we think. What matters, he argued, isn't whether you're literally the same person, but whether there's psychological connectedness and continuity. Imagine you'll undergo a procedure tomorrow that will slightly alter your personality and erase a few minor memories. Are you afraid? Probably not much. Now imagine the procedure will completely transform your personality and erase all your memories. This feels like death. Somewhere between these extremes, Parfit suggests, the question "is it still me?" becomes less a matter of binary yes or no and more a matter of degree. This has profound implications. If identity is less absolute than we imagine, perhaps the boundaries between us are less absolute too. When you help someone, when you sacrifice for future generations, you're not necessarily helping others in some absolute sense. We're all part of a continuous stream of consciousness and causation, overlapping and influencing each other. The Ship of Theseus still sails in philosophical discussions, carrying us toward shores where our ordinary concepts of self and other continuity and change begin to blur and dissolve. And perhaps that's exactly where we need to go. Part 4: The Burden of Existence, Antinatalism and the Ethics of Birth. There is a question that most of us never think to ask, because it seems to challenge the very foundation of human existence. Yet once it's asked, it's difficult to unask, difficult to forget. Is it ethical to bring children into the world? The antinatalist answers no. And their reasoning, however uncomfortable, demands our careful attention. At the center of antinatalist philosophy stands a simple but devastating observation. Life contains suffering. Not just occasional suffering that might be avoided with better luck or wiser choices, but structural, unavoidable suffering built into the very condition of being alive. You will lose people you love. Your body will eventually fail, probably painfully. You'll experience disappointment, frustration, fear, and grief. You'll struggle with decisions whose consequences you can't foresee. You'll lie awake at night worrying about things beyond your control. Even a good life, perhaps especially a good life, contains this suffering, because the more you have that's precious, the more you have to lose. The South African philosopher David Benatar has articulated perhaps the most systematic defense of antinatalism. His argument rests on an asymmetry between pleasure and pain, between benefit and harm. Consider someone who never exists. They don't experience any pleasure, but this isn't bad for them. They don't exist to be deprived. But they also don't experience any suffering, and this, Benatar argues, is good, even in the absence of anyone to enjoy that absence. Now consider someone who does exist. They experience both pleasure and pain. The pleasure is good, yes, but the pain is bad. And since the absence of pain is good while the absence of pleasure isn't bad, it would be better, Benatar concludes, never to have been born. This seems abstract, perhaps too abstract, but Benatar grounds it in observation. Look at the world. Look honestly at the ratio of suffering to joy. Consider that every human being who has ever lived has eventually died, many after periods of decline and pain. Consider the vast suffering in nature, animals eating each other alive, parasites, disease, and starvation. Consider the suffering humans inflict on each other: cruelty, war, oppression, betrayal. Consider the quiet desperations, the unlived lives, the paths not taken, the dreams unrealized. And then consider that you, by choosing to have a child, are creating someone who will necessarily endure their share of this suffering. You're creating someone who will age and die, someone who will lose people they love, someone who will experience failure and rejection and physical pain. The antinatalist doesn't necessarily say that all existing lives should end, but they argue that there's something morally questionable about creating new sentient beings, new locations of potential suffering, especially when those beings never consented to exist. This philosophy has ancient roots. The Greek tragedian Sophocles wrote, "Not to be born is best, when all is reckoned in." The German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer built an entire philosophical system around the idea that existence is fundamentally characterized by suffering, by wanting, by a will that can never be permanently satisfied. In Buddhism, the first noble truth is dukkha, often translated as suffering, but perhaps better understood as unsatisfactoriness, the inevitable friction between desires and reality. Critics of antinatalism argue that it's too pessimistic, that it fails to account for the genuine goods of existence. Yes, life contains suffering, but it also contains love, beauty, meaning, achievement, connection, and wonder. Don't these outweigh the suffering? The antinatalist might respond, perhaps for some people, in some circumstances. But can you guarantee that for your child? Can you ensure their life will contain more joy than suffering? Can you promise they won't experience depression, chronic pain, tragic loss, or existential despair? And even if you could, is it ethical to impose this gamble on someone without their consent? There's a deeper question here about the nature of consent and existence. You can't ask someone if they want to be born before they exist to be asked. But the antinatalist suggests this impossibility of consent is precisely the problem. When you cannot obtain consent, the ethical default should be non-action. The philosopher Julio Cabral has taken antinatalism in a slightly different direction, focusing not on suffering but on mortality. Every parent, he argues, condemns their child to death. The death sentence is built into the gift of life. Is this a gift anyone has the right to give? In contemporary discussions, antinatalism intersects with concerns about climate change, resource depletion, and human impact on the biosphere. Some environmentalists adopt antinatalist positions, arguing that the most ethical choice, given the environmental crisis, is to refrain from adding more humans to an already overburdened planet. Others approach it from an anti-frustrationist position, the idea that preventing suffering should take priority over creating happiness. Since the people who don't exist can't miss out on happiness, but the people who do exist will definitely experience suffering, the calculus favors non-existence. Living with antinatalist philosophy isn't necessarily about despair. Some antinatalists find their position freeing. If existence is something that was imposed on them, they're released from the obligation to find it meaningful or to reproduce the imposition. They can focus on reducing suffering where possible, on compassion for those who do exist, on living thoughtfully with the gift or burden that they didn't ask for. Whether you find antinatalism compelling or horrifying, it serves a purpose. It forces us to examine assumptions so deep we rarely notice them. The assumption that life is inherently good. The assumption that continuing the human species is valuable. The assumption that our own existence is justified. These are questions that philosophy, at its best, won't let us avoid. And in the quiet of this moment, perhaps we can sit with these uncomfortable thoughts, not to conclude, but simply to acknowledge how strange and profound it is that we exist at all, that anything exists, that consciousness emerged to ask these questions, to wrestle with the weight and wonder of being alive. Part 5. The Illusion of Choice, Free Will and Determinism. There's a moment that occurs countless times each day, so ordinary you barely notice it. You reach for a cup of coffee instead of tea. You turn left instead of right. You speak instead of remaining silent. In that moment, you feel like you're making a choice. You feel like you're the author of your actions, the captain of your soul, the master of your fate. But what if that feeling is an illusion? What if every decision you've ever made was determined long before you were aware of making it? This is the problem of free will, and it strikes at the heart of everything we believe about responsibility, morality, and what it means to be human. The scientific evidence is troubling. In the 1980s, the neuroscientist Benjamin Libet conducted a series of experiments that sent shockwaves through philosophy. He asked participants to flex their wrist whenever they felt the urge, and to note the exact moment they became aware of deciding to act. Using electrodes to monitor brain activity, Libet discovered something unsettling. The brain showed signs of initiating the action, what's called the readiness potential, about 350 milliseconds before the person reported becoming conscious of the decision to act. Think about what this means. Your brain had already started the process of moving your hand before you, your conscious self, decided to move it. Later experiments by neuroscientist John Dylan Haynes pushed this further. Using brain scanners, Haynes could predict which button a person would press up to 7 to 10 seconds before they reported making the conscious decision. 7 to 10 seconds. An eternity in cognitive time. Your brain seems to have decided, the neural patterns already in motion, long before your conscious mind catches up and experiences the sensation of choosing. Of course, the implications are complex. Some philosophers argue that these experiments don't really disprove free will. They just show that the conscious experience of decision-making comes after unconscious neural processes. But isn't that still troubling? If the decision is made unconsciously, then who's really deciding? The determinist position holds that every event, including every human action, is the inevitable result of prior causes. The universe is like a vast chain of dominoes falling, each one knocked over by the one before it, stretching back to the Big Bang. Under this view, you couldn't have done otherwise than you did. Given your genetics, your upbringing, your brain chemistry, the specific arrangement of neurons and neurotransmitters at the moment of decision, you had to choose what you chose. When you feel like you're weighing options, you're actually experiencing the predetermined outcome of a neural computation. The sense of deliberation, of genuine openness to multiple possibilities, is a user illusion, a way your brain represents its own processes to itself. This idea has ancient roots. The Greek atomists Leucippus and Democritus believed that everything was determined by the motion of atoms according to natural laws. Nothing happens at random. Everything has a cause. In the 18th century, Pierre Simon Laplace imagined an intellect vast enough to know the position and momentum of every particle in the universe. This intelligence, sometimes called Laplace Demon, could calculate the entire future and past. For such an intellect, Laplace wrote, nothing would be uncertain, and the future, just like the past, would be present before its eyes. But then quantum mechanics arrived, introducing fundamental randomness into the universe. Particles don't have definite positions until measured. Their behavior is probabilistic, not deterministic. Does quantum randomness save free will? Most philosophers say no. If your decisions are determined by prior causes, you're not free. But if they're random, you're not free either, you're just chaotic. True freedom would seem to require that you're the author of your choices, that they flow from your character and reasoning. But both determinism and randomness leave no room for this kind of authorship. The compatibilist tries to thread this needle. Philosophers like Daniel Dennett argue that free will is compatible with determinism. Yes, your choices are determined by prior causes, but those causes include your own desires, beliefs, and reasoning processes. You're free when you act according to your own nature, even if that nature is itself determined. Think of it like this: a river is determined by gravity, topography, and the volume of water, but we still say it flows freely when nothing blocks its path. Similarly, you act freely when you do what you want, uncoerced, even if what you want is itself the product of factors beyond your control. Critics find this unsatisfying. It seems to redefine freedom rather than preserve it. If everything about you, your wants, your reasoning, your very sense of self, is determined by factors outside your control, can you really be said to be free in any meaningful sense? Galen Strawson has formulated what he calls the basic argument against free will. To be truly responsible for your actions, you'd need to be responsible for your character and motivations. But to be responsible for those, you'd need to have chosen them. And to have chosen them responsibly, you'd need to already have a character and motivations guiding that choice. This leads to an infinite regress. At some point, factors beyond your control must have shaped who you are. The implications are profound. If we don't have free will, does moral responsibility make sense? Can we justly punish people for crimes if they couldn't have done otherwise? Can we take credit for our achievements if they were determined by fortunate genetics and circumstances? Some philosophers argue that giving up belief in free will would be catastrophic for society. Studies have shown that when people are primed to think they lack free will, they behave less ethically. They cheat more, help others less, and show more aggression. But others suggest we'd actually build a more compassionate society. If no one is ultimately responsible for who they are, we might be more forgiving of mistakes, more focused on rehabilitation than punishment, more aware of how circumstances shape behavior. We might recognize that the person who commits a crime isn't evil. They're unlucky. Unlucky in their genes, their upbringing, their brain chemistry, the circumstances that led to that moment. This doesn't mean we don't protect society, but perhaps we'd do so with more humility, more compassion. There's a strange paradox at the heart of this discussion. Even if free will is an illusion, we seem unable to live as if it is. When you deliberate about what to do, you can't help but feel like the decision is open, like multiple futures are possible, like you're the one choosing which future becomes real. The philosopher Immanuel Kant argued that we must act as if we have free will, even if we can't prove we do. Moral responsibility, dignity, and the entire ethical framework of human society depend on treating people as agents who can make genuine choices. Perhaps this is enough. Perhaps we don't need to solve the metaphysical puzzle to live well. We can acknowledge the scientific evidence suggesting our choices are determined, while also embracing the practical reality that we must deliberate, must choose, must take responsibility for our actions. In the end, whether or not free will is real, you still have to decide what kind of person you want to be, how you want to treat others, and what meaning you'll make of this strange gift of consciousness. And that, perhaps, is all the freedom we need. Part 6. The persistence of self, teleportation, and the continuity of consciousness. Imagine stepping into a chamber. You're told the machine will scan every atom of your body, every neural connection in your brain, every thought and memory currently flickering through your consciousness. The scan is perfect, complete. It captures everything that makes you you. Then, in an instant, your body is destroyed. Painlessly, completely. You cease to exist here. But simultaneously, on Mars, a machine reassembles you. Atom by atom, exactly as you were. The new body has all your memories, including the memory of stepping into the chamber on Earth. It feels like you. It thinks it's you. It continues your projects, loves your loved ones, fears your fears. The question is simple but profound. Is it you? This thought experiment has been explored in various forms by philosophers and science fiction writers for decades. It forces us to confront what we mean by personal identity, by the continuity of self. The person on Mars would insist they're you. They'd have every reason to believe they are. They'd remember your childhood, your first kiss, what you ate for breakfast this morning. They'd have your skills, your knowledge, your personality quirks. From the inside, there would be no discontinuity at all. But you, stepping into the chamber on Earth, might feel differently. As the machine powers up, as you face the moment of dissolution, you might wonder, am I about to die? Will I experience waking up on Mars? Or will my consciousness simply end, while a copy that thinks it's me continues my life? The philosopher Derek Parfit believed this distinction doesn't really matter. What's important, he argued, is psychological continuity, the preservation of memories, personality, and connections. If those are preserved, then in every practical sense, the person on Mars is you. But others, like the philosopher Mark Johnston, argue that what matters is the continuous existence of the same physical person. If your original body is destroyed, you die, even if a perfect copy is created elsewhere. The copy might be psychologically continuous with you, might have all your memories and traits, but it's not literally you. Consider a variation. What if the original body wasn't destroyed? What if the machine could create a copy on Mars while you remained on Earth? Now there would be two of you, both with your memories, both convinced they're you. But clearly, they can't both be you in the strictest sense. They'd immediately begin having different experiences, forming different memories, becoming different people. So, which one is really you? The original? But what makes being the original special if both are physically and psychologically identical? If we say both are you, then identity has split. One person has become two. But that seems strange. Can you really divide into multiple people? If we say neither is you, then we're left with the unsettling conclusion that perfect copying destroys identity, even when nothing about you physically changes. If we say only the original is you, then identity depends on some kind of physical continuity. But what exactly? Your body's atoms are constantly being replaced. If identity depends on physical continuity despite atomic replacement, why should scanning and reassembling be different? This puzzle becomes even more pointed when we consider that something like teleportation happens naturally, just slowly. Every cell in your body is eventually replaced. The atoms that make you up today are not the atoms that made you up 7 years ago. If gradual replacement preserves identity while instant replacement destroys it, then identity depends on arbitrary factors like the speed of replacement. This seems wrong. Some philosophers have suggested that what matters is the causal connection. You're the same person who went to bed last night because there's an unbroken causal chain connecting that person to you. Your current thoughts and memories were caused by brain states a moment ago, which were caused by states before that, tracing back continuously. In teleportation, the causal chain is broken. The original you causes the creation of a copy, but then the original ceases to exist. The copy is caused by the scanning process, not by the continuous functioning of your original brain. But is this distinction meaningful? In what sense are you caused by yourself from moment to moment? Isn't it more accurate to say that each moment of consciousness is caused by prior neural states, which are themselves caused by prior states, in an ongoing process? If that's the case, then teleportation just makes explicit what's always true. The self is not a substance that persists through time but a pattern, a process, a continuous story that the mind tells itself. This connects to the ancient Buddhist concept of anatta, no self. Buddhism teaches that the self we believe in, the permanent, unchanging essence we call I, is an illusion. What we are is a collection of physical and mental phenomena, constantly changing, without any enduring core. Each moment, you are slightly different from who you were the moment before. The person who began reading this script is not quite the same person who's reading these words now. You've had new thoughts, formed new memories. The illusion is that there's some unchanging you having these experiences. The reality is that there are just the experiences themselves, arising and passing away. From this perspective, the teleportation dilemma loses some of its sting. If there's no enduring self anyway, then the question, is the copy really me, becomes confused. There's just a pattern of information being instantiated in different physical substrates at different times. Yet this feels deeply unsatisfying to most of us. We have a powerful intuition that we persist through time, that the person who will wake up tomorrow morning will be me, not just someone who remembers being me. Perhaps this intuition serves an important function. Perhaps the fiction of a continuous self is necessary for moral responsibility, for planning, for love. You make promises based on the assumption that the person who makes the promise and the person who keeps it are the same. You save for retirement, assuming that you'll be the one who benefits. Without the concept of a continuous self, social life might be impossible. But there's another possibility. Perhaps we can hold both truths simultaneously. That the self is a useful fiction, a convenient way of organizing experience, and that we are, in some deep sense, patterns that could in principle be instantiated in different substrates while maintaining continuity of identity. If consciousness is what we might call substrate independent, if it's the pattern rather than the particular physical implementation that matters, then in principle, yes, you could be teleported. You could be uploaded to a computer. You could, in some far future, be instantiated in entirely new forms. But the uncertainty remains. The question each person must answer for themselves. If you stepped into that teleportation chamber, would you expect to wake up on Mars? Or would you expect simply to die, while a copy wearing your face, carrying your memories, lived on in your place? There may be no way to know until the technology exists. And perhaps, even then, no way to know for sure. But in asking these questions, we come closer to understanding what we are. Not solid things but fluid processes. Not permanent souls but temporary patterns in the cosmos. Beautiful because we're brief, meaningful because we're mortal. Part 7. The Logic of Omnipotence, God's Stone and the Limits of Power. Here's a puzzle that seems almost childish at first, but leads to profound questions about the nature of possibility and power. Can God create a stone so heavy that he cannot lift it? If God is omnipotent, all-powerful, then surely he can create such a stone. But if he creates it and cannot lift it, then he's not all-powerful, because there's something he cannot do. On the other hand, if he cannot create such a stone, then he's not all-powerful either, because there's something he cannot do, namely, create that stone. Either way, it seems, omnipotence leads to contradiction. This is the paradox of the stone, a version of the larger omnipotence paradox that has troubled theologians and philosophers for more than 1,000 years. The medieval philosopher Thomas Aquinas grappled with this puzzle in his Summa Theologica. His solution was subtle. God can do anything logically possible, but he cannot do things that involve logical contradictions, because such things aren't really things at all. They're just combinations of words that seem to refer to something but actually refer to nothing. An unliftable stone that can be lifted is like a square circle or a married bachelor. The words can be put together, but they don't describe any coherent possibility. The phrase itself is meaningless. From this perspective, asking whether God can create a stone he cannot lift is like asking whether he can make a four-sided triangle. The question has the grammatical form of a question, but it's not actually asking anything coherent. But this response might seem like a dodge. Surely there's a difference between logical impossibilities and mere physical limitations. A stone too heavy to lift isn't logically contradictory, it's just very heavy. Humans encounter such stones all the time. The issue is the combination. A stone too heavy for an omnipotent being to lift. That combination creates the contradiction. If God is truly omnipotent, capable of exerting infinite force, then no stone could be too heavy for him. A stone that's too heavy for him wouldn't be defeated by his power. It would contradict his nature. René Descartes took a different approach. He suggested that God's power extends even to logical truths. God could, if he chose, make contradictions true. He could make 2 + 2 = 5. He could create square circles. This view makes God truly unlimited, but at a cost. If God can violate logic, then we can't reason about God at all. Logic itself becomes contingent on divine whim. And if God could decide that contradictions are true, then anything we say about God, including that he's omnipotent, might be both true and false simultaneously. Most philosophers have found Descartes' position too radical. If we abandon logic, we abandon the possibility of meaningful thought about anything, including God. A different approach focuses on what we mean by power. Perhaps omnipotence doesn't mean the ability to do anything imaginable literally, but rather the possession of all powers that are possible to possess. Consider an analogy. We might say a chess grandmaster has mastered chess, but we don't mean they can make illegal moves. Mastery means excellence within the rules, not the ability to violate them. Similarly, perhaps divine omnipotence means having maximal power within the constraints of logical possibility. God can do anything that can be done, but cannot do things that involve contradictions, because such things aren't really doable at all. This preserves God's perfection while acknowledging that even infinite power has limits, not limits imposed from outside, but limits inherent like reality itself. But the paradox has broader implications beyond theology. It reveals something about the nature of power itself. We often think of power as something that can be accumulated without limit. The more power you have, the better. But the omnipotence paradox suggests that absolute power is incoherent. Power always exists within constraints, logical, physical, social. In human affairs, this manifests in interesting ways. A dictator with absolute authority might seem maximally powerful, but this very absoluteness can become a weakness. With no constraints, there's no structure, no predictability. Power that cannot be limited cannot be exercised effectively. Effective leaders often voluntarily limit their power by establishing institutions, by delegating authority, by committing themselves to rules. These self-imposed limitations paradoxically increase their effective power by making their actions predictable and trustworthy. There's a parallel here to Gödel's incompleteness theorems in mathematics. Gödel proved that any formal system powerful enough to express basic arithmetic must contain truths that cannot be proven within the system. The more powerful the system, the more it contains that it cannot capture. Similarly, perhaps the more powerful an agent becomes, the more they encounter limitations inherent in the very concept of agency and power. The omnipotence paradox also touches on questions of identity and change. If God could change his own nature, make himself less powerful, or change his moral character, would he still be God? If he couldn't change his nature, is he truly omnipotent? These puzzles suggest that a perfect being, like absolute power, might be self-limiting. To be perfect means to be complete, unchanging, and fully actual. But a being that couldn't change, couldn't learn, couldn't grow, is that truly more perfect than a being that could? Process theologians have suggested that God might be better conceived not as a static, perfect being but as a dynamic reality, growing and changing along with creation. Such a God would not be omnipotent in the classical sense but might be more coherent, more relatable, more involved in the unfolding drama of existence. In the end, the omnipotence paradox reminds us that our concepts, even our most exalted concepts, run into limits when pushed to extremes. Language and logic evolved to help finite beings navigate a finite world, strain and break when applied to the infinite. Perhaps this is why mystics in various traditions speak of God as beyond all concepts, beyond being and non-being, beyond power and powerlessness. The deepest truths, they suggest, cannot be spoken or thought but only experienced in silence. And in that silence, perhaps, the paradoxes resolve themselves, not through argument but through a recognition that some questions cannot be answered, only transcended. Part 8. The ethics of self, ethical egoism and the priority of the individual. There's a moral theory that sounds almost scandalous when first encountered, yet might describe how most of us actually live. Ethical egoism, the view that you should always act in your own self-interest. Not just that it's permissible to look out for yourself, but that it's morally right, even morally required. This isn't the same as psychological egoism, which claims that humans always do act in their self-interest, whether they realize it or not. Ethical egoism is a normative claim. You ought to pursue your own good above all else. The ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus came close to this view. He argued that pleasure is the highest good and that the wise person structures their life to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. But Epicurus defined pleasure broadly, not just physical gratification but peace of mind, friendship, and philosophical contemplation. Living well, for Epicurus, meant being prudent about which pleasures to pursue. Short-term indulgence might bring long-term suffering. A life of moderation and wisdom, surrounded by friends, engaged in meaningful activity, would actually produce more pleasure than a life of reckless hedonism. So even though Epicurus was a kind of egoist, his egoism was enlightened, focused on long-term well-being rather than immediate gratification. Ayn Rand, the 20th century Russian-American philosopher and novelist, articulated a more uncompromising version of ethical egoism. She argued that altruism, the ethics of self-sacrifice, was fundamentally destructive. Rand believed that treating your own life and happiness as your highest value wasn't selfish in a negative sense. It was rational and moral. Each person, she argued, has one life to live. To sacrifice that life, or parts of it, for others is to treat existence as worthless. She drew a sharp distinction between genuine self-interest and mindless hedonism or exploitation. True self-interest, Rand argued, requires rationality, productivity, and respect for others' rights. A rational egoist wouldn't steal or harm others, not because it's wrong in some selfless moral sense, but because such behavior would be self-destructive, undermining the social cooperation necessary for flourishing. Critics of ethical egoism often point to cases where self-interest seems to conflict with morality. If you could steal without being caught, would ethical egoism permit it? If lying serves your purposes, is it therefore right? The ethical egoist has several possible responses. One is to argue that such actions, even if immediately beneficial, would harm your character, making you the kind of person who's anxious, distrustful, and unable to form genuine relationships. True self-interest, properly understood, includes developing virtues and living with integrity. Another response is to bite the bullet. Yes, if you could truly benefit from an action without negative consequences, ethical egoism would permit it. But this, the egoist argues, is actually more honest than conventional morality, which often involves self-deception about our true motivations. A third response is to argue that ethical egoism isn't really about following your immediate desires but about rationally pursuing your long-term interests. And in a social species like humans, long-term interests are deeply entangled with the interests of others. You need other people, for trade, for friendship, for love, for meaning. A society where everyone is constantly exploiting everyone else would be miserable for everyone, including you. So rational self-interest supports developing character traits like honesty, reliability, and fairness, not because these are intrinsically good, but because they serve your goals. Something is compelling about this framework. It grounds morality in something concrete, your own life and well-being, rather than in abstract duties or mysterious moral facts. Consider the airplane safety instruction. Put on your own oxygen mask before helping others. This isn't selfishness, it's wisdom. You can't help anyone if you're unconscious. Ethical egoism generalizes this principle. To be effective in the world, to contribute to others, to live meaningfully, you must first take care of yourself. This means developing your abilities, maintaining your health, pursuing your goals, and guarding your time and energy. Parents who sacrifice everything for their children, neglecting their own needs and development, often end up resentful, exhausted, and modeling martyrdom rather than flourishing. The parent who maintains their own identity, pursues their own interests, and shows their children what a life well lived looks like. Similarly, in relationships, the healthiest dynamics often involve two whole people choosing to share their lives, not two half people desperately trying to complete each other through sacrifice and merger. But there's a problem with ethical egoism that runs deeper than particular cases. It seems to make moral disagreement unintelligible. If I ought to pursue my interests and you ought to pursue yours, what happens when our interests conflict? There's no neutral ground from which to adjudicate the dispute. We can't both be right if we're making incompatible claims about what to do. The ethical egoist might respond that conflict doesn't require moral resolution. We negotiate, compromise, or compete. Morality doesn't need to provide a single correct answer to every situation. But this seems to give up on what morality is supposed to do. Provide guidance for how to live together, how to resolve disputes, how to treat each other fairly. There's also something odd about ethical egoism as a public philosophy. If everyone adopted it, would you want to publicly advocate for it? After all, it's often in your interest that others act altruistically toward you, even if you act egoistically toward them. This creates what philosophers call a self-effacing quality. Ethical egoism might recommend not promoting ethical egoism, because it's in your interest that others don't adopt it. Some philosophers have suggested that ethical egoism works best as what's called an esoteric doctrine, a view for the wise few, not for public consumption. But this sits uncomfortably with our sense that moral truths, if they exist, should be universalizable. Perhaps the deepest issue is that ethical egoism struggles to make sense of the separateness of persons. When you care about someone, truly care, their interests start to feel like your interests. Their suffering becomes your suffering. Their joy becomes your joy. In these moments, the sharp boundary between self-interest and other interest dissolves. You help them not out of enlightened self-interest, not because it serves your long-term goals, but because their well-being has become intrinsically valuable to you. This suggests that the dichotomy between egoism and altruism might be false. Perhaps the best life involves transcending the question of whose interests are being served, recognizing that in our deepest relationships, self and other are not fully separate. The Japanese concept of ari, often translated as love, captures something of this. It suggests a unity where benefiting the other is not separate from benefiting yourself, because at some level, you are not fully separate. Yet there's wisdom in ethical egoism's core insight. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Self-care is not selfish, it's foundational. Knowing your own needs, respecting your own limits, pursuing your own development. These are not obstacles to ethical life but prerequisites for it. Perhaps the synthesis is this: cultivate yourself so that you have something to give. Develop your abilities so that you can contribute. Take care of your needs so that generosity comes from abundance rather than depletion. And in doing so, you might find that the boundary between self and other, between egoism and altruism, was never as clear as it seemed. Would you like me to continue with the remaining sections to reach the 2 to 3 hour duration? I can develop sections on Roko's basilisk, perception and reality, quantum immortality, philosophical zombies, Zeno's paradoxes, the problem of induction, moral anti-realism, and the paradox of tolerance, maintaining the same contemplative, sleep-friendly tone throughout.